I do apologize. I realized I was on mute for the last 90 plus seconds or so talking. So my apologies. Please forgive me, folks. Happy Monday to you all, and welcome to Trade Ideas Live Forum Q&A. This is a live open forum, so we don't do pre-done content here, folks. We rely on you folks to drive that with your questions. So don't be shy. Get those questions in for us, and we'll get right to answering those. Thank you so much. So again, don't be shy, folks. Get those questions in for us, please. Love to get those answered for you. Love to help you with that. That is what we are here for. That's what this says. All right, we got an extra shy crowd today. Nobody wants to chime in with anything, I guess. Fair enough. I can't force the questions out of you. But again, anybody that has questions, please don't be shy about it. Get those in for us. No, it's Chris here today. So just kind of hanging out, hoping that some folks have some questions. If not, I guess, we can tour the market again. But, I always like to say, I don't think there's anything that I'm going to talk about with the charts and the overall market that, there isn't a ton of other people talking about. So it doesn't, I just don't feel like it's a good use of anybody's time. But of course, we'll fill the air if we need to. So. Yeah, Bill, we could come back to the market. Let's see if I can help AJ with a software question. When building alert windows for the bottom time. AJ, I've tried to do a bunch of stuff like that to help users in the past. I really couldn't come up with anything great. What I would recommend to folks is this. There's no alert that's really going to work great for that. So you're going to want to probably look at a topless window instead and just filters. Of course, it would help if this loaded. We'll just have to hang out here till the topless configure wants to load, I guess. Let's stuff down. So the thing that I tell people is maybe look more at the position and range. You're going to want to, if you're looking for topping shadows, you want to be off the highs. And if you're looking for bottoming shadows, you're going to want to be off the lows. So, you'd use some combination there. I'm just going to pick on the 5-minute range. So some combination with the minimum and maximum, making sure you're off the highs, but not too far off the highs, and off the lows, but not too far off the lows, and that kind of combination there. But it's tricky because there's no way to, there's no way to indicate you're just getting the shadow that you want. And, if you're looking for the body to look a specific way, trying to find like a hammer candle or something like that, it's tough to find in that regard. And there are a few alerts if you're looking for different kinds of shadows. Maybe you want to look into a few of these. Let's go over those real quick. Candlesticks. So you got these different dojis with shadows. You got these different hammers, hanging man. Those would be the ones with shadows primarily. I don't know if there's anything else that we offer in that regard. Yeah, that would be it regarding those ones specifically. So those are the directions that I would send you there, AJ. And then question about amount per trade. Is it? I'm not sure what you're referring to with that. 3 sharp. You are welcome, AJ. Software issue here going on, folks. Bear with me. No. So I risk the same amount of money each trade, but each trade doesn't necessarily have. Sorry, bear with me. My software is going crazy on me right now in this beta version. So yeah, I risk the same amount of money each trade is what I do, but that doesn't equal the same amount of shares each trade. Nor does it equal the same amount that I put into each trade. So each trade based on my stop loss, is the size that it'll be. I'm risking X amount each trade. Yeah, I have what you see on the screen here. There's some windows on some other pages here that I don't show just because I don't think they have anything to do with what we're really doing here at this point. But yeah, I can go ahead and share this layout with you. It should, with the exception of the My Liked, it's, it'd load all the windows. But remember, the layout, I've created this for me, this layout here. So but you're welcome to what I have here. So there you go with that. How I'm doing all right. I mean, yeah, we could look at QBTS. I don't really analyze stocks like that. QBTS. I mean, what time frame are we looking at it on? So yeah, actually, it's funny. I was looking at this last week. I like the chart overall. It's in, I believe, quantum computing and information, all that, which I believe is a hot area more than less. And I like this kind of shape that's going on right here with that chart pattern on the daily chart there. So it looks like a lot of things have, they moved up early in the day and they're kind of giving it up at this point. So we'll see how that goes. We can see that, the SPY is selling off a little bit here. So lifetime high right up in here, somewhere up in here. So I like the chart pattern overall. Wow. Just nothing wants to work for me right now on this computer. I like that chart pattern that's going on right there. $20 is a bit of a tough one, right? Those whole numbers, especially $10, $20, those can be a little tough psychological numbers for stocks to get through. But I like it overall. I've got it on my liked symbols. I don't know whether I'll trade it or not, but yeah, I like it. So let's see. Got that shared. Rooted and rising and running. TI Inside Paralyzed and Mac OS and Gateway connected brokerage plus one link to IBR. Are you running TWS? Are you running IB through Parallels as well? Or are you running IB on the Mac side? You got to run everything through Windows side. I generally tell people don't use the gateway. Use the API through TWS. Just my personal 2 cents on it from having used it for a number of years. That's, going to remain up to you, obviously. But that would be the first thing I would look at. Outside of that, I'd have to take this back to emails with you because, I'm going to need to ask you for information that you'll have to send me via email and whatnot. So, unfortunately, this isn't the best platform for me to troubleshoot that. But I am the person that would troubleshoot it. I'm I'm one of the only people that really has used Brokerage Plus actually here. So, but yeah, that's the first thing I would say is make sure everything's running inside the Parallels environment. Because if you have one in Parallels and one in Mac OS, they can't talk to each other. And keep the questions coming, folks. Don't be shy. Don't be shy. And Rooted, let me know if that was the issue or not, because if it's something along those lines, we'll get you there through this. If it's not, we'll have to take other means and look at this that way. But we'll get you sorted one way or the other here. Steve's trade of the week was Apple. Interesting. Take a look at Apple. kind of really consolidating here for a while. You had the sell off. A bit of a bounce and just kind of consolidating in that range at this point. So it keeps poking its head right up against that, I guess 215, give or take. 216, whatever it is right in here. It gets through that, you start to get some areas to look at to the upside. You get through that 215, 216, then you're looking at that 226, give or take, and then you're looking at 240. And Raja, you don't see what don't you see? Is it on a bullish trend for intraday trading? No, it's not. I mean, it's been in a downtrend for a while now. They're intraday anyways. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 candles in a row moving that way for 5 minutes. It's now got a 60-minute engulfing here, bearish engulfing. So there's no intraday time frame. I mean, look at it here. Look at these big candles moving back against the positive candles here, through the beginning of the day, and then it kind of ekes it out coming up this way. So it's in a downtrend right now. Yeah, I mean, there's a good amount of windows there. I use a lot of compare count windows. So, although I could probably get rid of most of those compare count windows at this point, I don't really use any of them anymore. But they're there, and that's what it is. It is what it is. Earnings last week, they blew it out the doors. We keep hearing all these things about how bad everything is and all that. And I believe that we had all kinds of record settings for earnings last year. So, there's that. There's always that to consider. A 60-day SMA? Do you mean like on my chart? I have a VWAP on the 60-day here. Actually, I think I must have removed. I had an 8 EMA on here, but I think I must have removed it. I don't really need it. Where the heck is indicators? There we go. Oh, God. Okay. Apparently, I can't move that. Huh. My 8 EMA is not showing up. There it is. Now it's back. Interesting. Oh, I see. The trade wave is hiding the 8 EMA. That's what's going on. That's what's going on. So yeah, the black line's a VWAP. Email here to info@trade-ideas.com. You are welcome. You are welcome. So yeah, keep the questions coming, folks. Keep the questions coming. So, all right, that's what we got there. I guess we could look around the market itself while we wait to see if other questions come in. There's one. All right, let's get to that then. Just talked about having a group of stocks you watch and trades off setups. Do you do the same? Kind of. I have some stocks that are on my liked list here. Some I'm interested in. Some are there for other reasons. I'm testing some stuff. So some stocks that I've been trading off of recently. ON. Still have part of a position in there. SMR, I traded that a bunch. I've been out of it for a little bit now. I probably exited it too soon. I exited on this day here. I exited on this day back here, and I watched this happen that day, and this happened. Now, of course, hindsight's like it's back down about where I exited, but that's life. So I missed out on a couple dollars coming up that way, but it is what it is. Same thing with RKLB. I was in a position in this, and I got out actually on this bar here towards the top of this bar that day, and then it went on for several. Actually, that's a lie. I got out somewhere up here around 45, only to watch it peak over 50. That's where it was. But it is what it is. You make some money. You always think that whenever the trade goes well, you think you should have had more or held on longer. When it goes bad, you had too much and you held on too long. So it's the way it goes. So, most of those stocks come from this list here, this evening scan here that is in the layout that I shared. And I'll share it as an individual scan if someone wants it. Okay, just going to be one of those days today. It's taking a hot moment here for it to load from the cloud. Wow, this is just being really difficult right now. I'm on an internal beta because I'm testing things internally before we release it to the public. We test things internally before they go out live. Yeah, I'm not a fan of chasing pre-market anything. I'm not a fan of the pre-market period, but that's just because I got my butt kicked in the pre-market so much. My software is going crazy right now. I'm going to shut down and reload it. Let's see what happens here. What do you mean? How can we test a strategy before it's implemented? I'm not sure what you mean. I mean, like we're just scanning here, so there's nothing to necessarily test. You know, you look at the ideas that are coming from the scan, and you know, if you don't like the scan itself, you can always refine it, or you can just get rid of it completely and start from scratch. But I'm not sure what you mean by test. If you could possibly elaborate a little bit. All right, here we go. So here's that evening scan that I was alluding to for the last several moments. Yeah, I mean, you know, some of the issues that I have with the pre-market are more personal. You know, stocks that are moving like that just aren't conducive to my personality. It's a big one for me. I don't want to have to be in and out that fast. The other thing is, you know, a lot of these stocks like that when you're day trading, you know, if you're looking for, you know, 10, 15, 20 cents, you got to take a good amount of shares to make it worth your while, which also means if it moves against you, it quickly moves against you into a loss. Where look, on something like, you know, for example, this SMR, you know, I took this here on I took this back here when it was consolidating at 40, right? And I had my stop loss down here. I never get stopped out. It turns around and comes back up, and I get out around 45, right? So even if I just took 100 shares on that, you know, my gain was 500, you know, and you know, my loss was the same, you know, by only being at 100 shares. I actually took it at 39. But anyways, my loss would have been my loss would have been 400. Anyways, my point being is I can, with swing trading, I take a smaller share size, and when it moves against me, I'm not as nervous or, apprehensive about that move against me with a smaller share size. I can sit patiently for it to move in the direction that I'm hoping it moves based on my own trading plan and reading the charts and all those things like that. So versus, you're trying to get something that's got these, 5-minute topping shadows and bottoming shadows that are huge, and you got, hundreds of thousands of shares trading every minute, and the thing's bouncing all over the place, and your gut is wrenched with every one of those. That's just a personal thing for me, though. Other people can handle that well, and good on them. Something similar with what's another one? Like something similar with Rocket Lab here. I took this back here on a 38 break. And I had a stop loss down here, around 33. I risked 500, and, I knew it was moving into all-time highs. And I just thought to myself, this bar, and on this bar, I was like, it's time to take some money on it. Now look, hindsight's 2020. I left several dollars per share on the plate here. But, I'm not trying to call tops and bottoms. You get a move like this, and if you can get this piece of that move, you don't get the bottom part, you don't get this top part here, but still, you're getting a good portion of that move every time with proper risk management, you're going to end up all right. So again, keep those questions coming, folks. Keep those questions coming. I'll pivot back. I guess I'll pivot back to look at the overall market again while I wait for some more questions to come in. So, we're getting into the dog days of summer here. For the most part, volume stayed pretty consistent for a while here. There's the saying, sell in May and go away. And you had this volatility and volume that came here. And, as we approached May, it did take that dip for the overall market. There's plenty to trade out there always. So I'm not really a sell in May, go away person. But, we could see a difference in volume here over the last couple of weeks for sure. Today doesn't look like it's stacking up to be a real high volume day. We're grinding higher on that lower volume. So, look, if you've done well through this period, because we've been in a nice uptrend for a couple of months now, right? There's nothing really volatile going on all through here. No big gaps necessarily. Got one gap right here, basically, but nothing else really major. So this is that time where you ask yourself, or you say to yourself, all right, I've done all right in here. And maybe I want to be a little protective as we continue to grind into new all-time highs. Now, look, we could just continue to straight grind out new all-time highs for a while before some kind of pullback comes in. There's clearly no way to predict it. But what we can do is, protect profits. I'm a big fan of, all right, I've had a few weeks or a month plus that I'm trading full share lots. Let's just say, for example, 100 shares is my full lot, and I've been doing well on that 100 shares over the last 5, 6, 7, 8 weeks. I may say to myself, all right, maybe we start entering with a little less, 75, 80, 85 shares, and looking to be a little more protective of what we've taken in for a little bit while we continue to march along like this. Look, there's always going to be a pullback or a crash or whatever, they happen. They're going to continue to always happen, but predicting them is just not possible. I'd also say that if you're someone who hasn't found success over these last couple of months here, month and a half plus, whatever it is, you really got to go back and look at all your trades, what you traded, why you entered it, why you set up the trade management of it, your stop loss, and how you manage the upside of it. And you got to look at all those things and say to yourself, what do all the bad parts of the trade have in common? What do all the good parts of the trade have in common? And start to figure out how you leave more of that bad stuff behind. That's where I would be living on any of that. Any opinions on BBAI? Never have an opinion, but we could look at the chart. I mean, outside of I like the chart or don't like the chart, what time frame are we looking at? I mean, I'm going to use the three time frames I have up here. On a daily chart, kind of, tough. Why did I lose my browser? Sorry, I lost my picture-in-picture charts. I don't know what happened there. Let me reload that. So, we hit the way back machine. We see this thing's kind of got this big curl up going on right here outside of this recent spot right here. We're up above most everything else. So this thing is kind of cooking along right now. Gave some back. It's like an area where it had been some resistance. Maybe it's retested that and bounced off of it. Showing a bit of weakness again today, though, overall. That's what I'm looking at. Good size short float. It's got some short growth going on in it, too. I'd be careful of that. It's nowhere near lifetime highs. So these are things that I always like to be cautious and weary of. A lot of times after that whole GameStop phenomenon and AMC and whatever else, you get all these people like short float, high short float. You got to remember, stocks with high short float means there's a lot of people that don't believe in that stock, right? They have a reason that they don't believe in it. It's not just, random. And so you got to remember that if you're betting against that short float, you're betting against their research, their technical analysis, whatever it is. You want to be sure that what you are betting against, that you think you are on the right side of that bet, right? And so I just caution people, when you see a stock that's got these kind of, topping shadows here and then shows a little weakness as it moves up towards the top of a range, you just want to be careful when you see that kind of short float and that kind of short growth. Not to mention the days to cover here. That means also anybody short, there's, based on the average trading of the stock, it only take half a day for the short folks to cover. So it's not like there's this massive amount of short covering that will need to go on to necessarily drive that price up on a squeeze. So these are things I'd be looking at, in that regard. So keep them coming. Don't be shy, folks. Get those questions in. What else do we got going on here? Oh, very cool. A DoD contract. It generally doesn't hurt companies when the government's giving them money. Generally doesn't hurt companies when the government gives them money. All right, what else we got doing here? Sorry, we were talking about the SPY a little bit. We'll just keep around the markets while I wait for other questions to come in. Again, like I said before, I don't think I have any special insight on the markets that you can't hear in lots of other places, but we'll talk about it to fill some air and just think out loud anyways. Again, we see a little bit of decline in the volume here as we move up against it. So, you just always want to be careful about stocks moving up on lighter volume. I guess you'd want to be careful about it with indices moving up on lighter volume too. I don't know that it's the same metrics that apply like that overall, but it doesn't hurt. It never hurts to be cautious. I like to be optimistic. I prefer bull markets. We're in bull markets 75% of the time and bear markets 25% of the time, roughly those numbers. So it stands to reason to be more bullish than bearish. I think overall bulls make more money than bears. Overall, not, it's not an end all be all on that. Plus, I'd rather be positive than negative, just the way I feel about things. But we're still talking about markets. We're still talking about an environment that is not set up for retail investors to succeed in, right? And for retail investors to succeed, they need a solid tool. They need to act like professionals, and they need a professional, to treat it professionally with a trading plan, right? And so that cautious optimism is warranted, I think. And so, like I said, if you've done well through this part here, doesn't hurt to take a day or two, reassess some things, check some setups, see what's, relatively strong to everything else going on, those kinds of things like that. The diamonds, look at that real fast, representing your Dow Jones 30 here. They took a little longer to catch up to the rest, right? They didn't quite bounce the same as the Qs and the SPYs. They consolidated a bit more and then just kind of shot right up. Almost a bit of a flag going on here with the diamonds now at this point. So we'll see how that goes. Not quite at all-time highs here. So one might say that these are taking a little more time to digest everything as we come through. And we see some consolidation periods after some move ups, a little more consolidation, and then a move up versus the grinding higher that we see with the S&P and the Qs. So that's something to keep in mind with the Dow Jones. And last but not least, we'll look at the IWMs. These ones grinding higher, just grinding a little different than the Qs and the SPY, and less consolidating, choppier consolidation, let's call it, than the diamonds. It's a wider consolidation here, I would call that, right? And it's kind of grinding higher, and then you get a little bit of consolidation again in this area here. So we'll see where that goes. Anybody that pays attention to the Swing Picks video, market recap that I do, goes out with that Swing Picks there. I've talked at nauseum about this 220 level on the IWM. Above it, I think we have more of a risk-on environment. Below it, we have more of a risk-off environment. That's just my kind of 2 cents anyways. Sell in May, go away, come again, St. Leger's Day. I don't think anybody has to wait for anything. I mean, I'm, actively trading. I have active positions in a couple of stocks right now. I just think that, you want to pick and choose your stocks based on a solid trading plan, and also keep in mind, when you look at those stocks, are they moving in lockstep with the market? Are they moving slightly different than the market? Meaning, if the market's grinding higher, are these stocks moving a little stronger than the market? Or are they moving a little weaker than the market, even though they're both heading the same direction? If you're in something and it's moving up, but it's moving weaker than the market overall, well, when we get a sell-off, if that sell-off comes while you're holding that position, you may find yourself, back underwater of that position very quickly. So those are the kinds of things that I'm talking about here with the, just watch, as when a stock moves higher on lighter volume, and you've got the indexes moving higher on lighter volume, and perhaps that stock isn't moving with the market as strongly as the market is, you want to protect some profit. That's all. But I think we can all agree there's a lot of stuff that's moving every day, whether you're day trading or swing trading, that looks strong as heck with a lighter market look. Unfortunately, because I had to restart my software here, I lost what was really going on for big winners on the day from this race. So that's kind of a shame. I can't even get into that. But I think any given day, outside of a day where the market's just completely tanking, you're going to find, a dozen or more solid day plays anyways, depending on what exactly you're looking for, what your definition of liquidity is, so on and so forth. Those kinds of things like that. That's what I'm thinking there. So a few more minutes before I wrap up for the day here, folks. Don't be shy. Get those questions in if you have them. Guess, toward the overall market, we could quickly look at some sectors here. Gold just continues. These are gold miners. Gold just continues to be a behemoth at this point. Here's GLD representing actual gold. I mean, just, look at that. Look at that move here off this base. It's chopping at this point and consolidating. You got two camps out there. They both have data that will support their whatever, about inflation. One camp says that, inflation is cooled and, things are obviously higher priced than they were a few years ago, but the actual inflation itself is cooled. You have other data that says contrary to it. I'll let people argue whatever they want to argue. But, gold's consolidating up here. You have this huge move in volume into that move up. You've had pretty strong volume stay here overall in this consolidation period. So, it's something to keep an eye on without any question. I don't have a favorite strategy for day trading, Muhammad. I'm not a day trader. Some of the trades that I take end up being day trades instead of swing trades, but it's not intentional anymore at this point. But when I was day trading, I'd try to find stuff that, maybe made not a huge move up, but a decent move up during the day on some strong volume and consolidated. And then I'd set price alerts to see if we could break out above those levels. Oh, Mark, you got it. Always a pleasure to do this. I can never stress this enough. This software and the community built around the software has given me so much. Even before I came to be lucky enough to work for Trade Ideas, any way I could pay it forward to folks out there trying to make it in this world. Anything I could do for that, it's huge. I know Palantir, that is one that will haunt me for a long time. I owned this stock at such a low price and then sold it at what I thought was such a high price and thought I was a genius. And that low price was $17. That high price was $23. And I thought it was like the greatest trade I ever made. And I thought I was the biggest genius on the planet. And then I just kept thinking I'd get another chance to get in it. Only I didn't. It just never happened. It just kept going. And anyway, that's life. What are you going to do? But there'll be another shot like that at something. I'm not trading with some crazy account that's got an insane amount of money in it or anything like that. So, it is what it is. When I've got money on the table, I've got to protect those profits. And perhaps someday I will have that kind of account where I can take these large sizes and I could get out half of it and let the other half just ride for as long as I really want. Just not in that position. That's all. That's part of the growth of what we do here. Crypto stocks are still hot. Yeah, we got Riot, right? That's one of the big crypto stocks. Bitcoin, yeah, it's a pretty good move here last several weeks. Riot, what's the other one? CLSK? Yeah, this is another Bitcoin kind of related stock. This hasn't done as much. Mara, that's the other one. Mara is the other Bitcoin stock. This hasn't done quite as much here either. So I don't, outside of Bitcoin, I don't really pay attention to any crypto, and I don't. It's not like I'm like some Bitcoin aficionado or whatever. I look at the price. I like to take a peek like once a day, usually at what it's doing. I feel like Bitcoin is a bit of a risk on, risk off type of indicator as well. The more people are working in the crypto space and Bitcoin in general, it just feels like people feel more comfortable putting money to work overall in markets, which, helps some confidence in your positions and not letting those little wobbles to the downside knock you out when you really should be staying in because the trend is still intact. Those kinds of things like that. So, yeah. So give it another minute or two if there's some questions to come in here for me to answer. If not, I'll begin to wrap it up for the day here. NetTray, we like to hear that. We appreciate that feedback. Look, what we're doing here as a company, it only works for us if you folks are making money. If you're not making money using our software, it's not good for us. You're making money with our software, clearly you're going to be sticking with it, and that's what we want to see, and that's what we want to hear. Can I show some of the stocks that I'm following? Yeah, sure. I'll go over a couple of those before I wrap up here. So IREN, unfortunately, that's made a big move here without me to this point today. I was watching that in this consolidation here, got away from me. BKKT, I was considering it, but not anymore. Just not enough volume in that for me. I need more liquidity in that. That's not going to cut the mustard for me. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and unlike that right now. Toast, watching this, it's AI related or information AI related. This is something I may be considering a position in at this point. You got to hit the Wayback Machine to see any kind of any resistance at this point. Nice and liquid. It's got a bit of a short float, but nothing crazy. Same with the short growth here. So I like the look of this. The one thing that trips me up is like you keep getting these kinds of days, right? It gaps, makes this big gap up and gives it up. But it's really, got a couple days marching higher overall here. So kind of watching up here at this 48 level. But it's high on my radar. DraftKings is high on my radar here. Made this nice move up here, a little bit of pullback, tested that 40 level. That's obviously a big level. Now it's fighting at this 45 level here. I think, if it can hang around here and start to push up, we got 50, and I get 53, 54 after that. So there's some nice risk reward scenario setups in here, I feel like, with DraftKings. We talked about that already. ON, I do have a position in this already. So, and I've got this position in ON from $58. I got it in from here, like 58.15 from this day back here. So I've been in this for a little bit. Part of me is thinking, should I have sold some today? But honestly, I'm trying to hold out for this level up here around 65, 66, moving up. So, you know, if it starts to pull back much more today, if it looks like it's going to give up today's lows, I may consider exiting the position. But that's not what I want to do, obviously. But we'll see what happens here. SMCI, I was looking at that, but I just don't think so here. I just don't feel like it's strong enough to the overall market. The way the overall market's moved up, and this has just moved up much weaker than the overall market. I keep an eye on it, but I don't think so really. CORZ, I'd been watching this, and then I had this gap down, probably some news or something happened there. I don't know what it is. If it can reclaim 15 again, maybe I'll get interested in that again. Western Digital, I leave up here to remind me to let winners run. I took this trade somewhere back in here. I got out somewhere in here. It never really made any kind of big pullback, and it just continued to move on. I left a solid $10+ on the table with that trade. You know, so I've got it there. I don't think I'll get back into it at this point. But, you know, when I took this trade, I was looking at trying to get that gap fill. If I just stuck with the plan, I got that gap fill. There was no pain involved in that ever. So just reinforcing, you know, when you got a plan and the plan has been working and the market isn't moving against you, stick to your plan. Don't be a fool. That's for me, that being the fool part. That's really it for ones that I'm really interested in. Some of these other ones I don't have any interest in. I never did, or they're dividend stocks that I own in my 401k, and I've owned them for a long time. And I just reinvest the dividend and buy a few shares of them each month, and that's really it. A Pure Storage here is something I was kind of interested in, but again, you know, the rest of the market's moving this way, and this is moving this way right now. So, but I'm looking at it here, you know, has this little bit of gap to fill still here, but I just don't think on that light amount of liquidity that's going to work for me. So I'm leaving it on there, but I don't have any real conviction into it. So those are the big ones that I'm looking at this point. And that'll do it. So, all right, folks, that wraps up for me for the day here. Appreciate you all joining. I don't know. That's all I got for the day. So we will see you on the next one. And you all have a great rest of the day and a great rest of the week. Take care, everybody. Be safe. Bye-bye.